Thank you for joining us. I hope you're all well and safe this afternoon. We've got a great webinar for you today, Creating Your Personal Budget. In a moment, I'm going to introduce you to our presenter, Alan Prakash. He's our newest junior accountant at Tax and Trust Professionals. First, we're going to go over those Zoom controls though. So if you're unfamiliar with how Zoom works, you can roll your mouse over the screen and those buttons will pop up for you to use the chat box or the Q&A box to put in any questions. We'll be checking those throughout the webinar and answering them if they're appropriate, or we'll answer them at the end. If you do need to leave, you can click on that leave meeting button at any point, but we do hope you'll stay because we've got lots of great information for you today. So I'd like to introduce to you Alan Prakash. Welcome, Alan. We've got our ears turned on for you today. Alan, you're still muted.
Can you hear me now, guys?
Yeah.
Thank you, Rhonda, and thank you all for attending today's webinar. I hope you're all staying well and keeping safe during the lockdown. Before we get stuck in, I just want to throw in our usual disclaimer that the information in this educational webinar is general in nature and should not be a substitute for tailored advice specific to your particular circumstances. Feel free to take notes anytime during this webinar as well. If you have any other questions, please get in touch later, or you can put your questions in the Q&A or the chat box and we'll try to get through them later. Before we start, I'm just going to launch the poll for this webinar, which is just 2 questions, and if you can make sure you complete that, we can put that away and move on to the webinar. Thank you. I'll just put the poll on now. Okay, so let's start by taking a look at our thought for the day. It is critical that kids start to learn the value of money, short-term and long-term savings, and budgeting at an early age. Some of us were never taught these things as kids, but it's never too late to learn, and that's why we're all here today. So this pandemic has certainly highlighted some gaps in the business community's financial awareness skills, and the best place to start in terms of growing these skills is with ourselves and therefore with our kids. Sometimes as accountants, or even in general, we tend to focus more on business budgets and business forecasts and not so much on personal budgets. We get a lot of questions from our clients who have their own businesses about their personal spending along the lines, did I really spend this much last year? And having a personal budget or creating a personal budget is one of the first steps to creating good financial awareness. So let's take a look at the agenda for today. We'll start off with understanding what a personal budget is, the obvious and the unexpected benefits of having a personal budget, the different components within a personal budget. Then we'll take you through a template and show you how to do a personal budget, a really simple template, and that's easy to do and shouldn't take too long to do. So from there, we'll move on to the next steps that you can do to continue on this journey of financial awareness and all the support that we can provide. And we'll wrap things up with a Q&A where you can ask all your questions. If you have any questions in the meantime, like I mentioned earlier, please leave them in the box and we'll get to that later. Okay, so let's jump straight into it. What is a personal budget? A personal budget is a finance plan that allocates future income towards expenses, savings, and debt reduction. This is a definition of a personal budget. It's a really useful definition because it makes 3 different distinctions. Firstly, this is a personal budget. Its purpose and nature is quite different from a budget you would create for your business. Secondly, your personal budget is not just something you create and then tuck away in the bottom drawer. It's an actionable plan that if followed will help you achieve your financial and other goals. And lastly, your personal budget is forward-facing for a 12-month period and is broken down into months. It allocates your future personal income, including your salaries, your drawings from your business, dividends, and it allocates them towards your savings and your expenses and paying off your debt. Put really simply, a personal budget is a plan that lays out how you will spend your money. So let's take a look at the benefits of having a personal budget. There are many benefits of having a personal budget, and some of these are really obvious and are financially focused, but some of them, there are other benefits, things like reducing your stress, having a better control of your financial and just in general other things, and also building good habitats and improving communication with your significant others. So the value in having more control of your financial future cannot be underestimated, and focusing on your budget brings your focus to something that you can have real control over. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the session, personal budgeting helps you focus on your money goals and creates a better awareness of where your money is going. A common comment we get from our clients when they look at their annual accounts is that we can't possibly have spent that much money last year. And if you've ever had this thought, then don't worry, you're in very good company. And this is a sure sign that by spending just maybe an hour each month, drilling down into your financials and your personal spendings, you'll have a greater awareness of where your money is actually going. So the first benefit is the obvious benefit, having money goals and awareness of how much money you're spending and what you're spending it on. It creates better money habits, which in turn helps you manage your finances better. And this enables you to achieve your financial goals, things like increasing your savings, for instance. Or if you don't have any savings, then it allows you to manage your funds to be able to make or increase your savings. One of my friends who I live with, she has been working for the past 3 years, and she told me the other day that she hasn't been saving anything at all in the last 3 years, which really shocked me, and I didn't really understand why she didn't have any savings. So the reason for that, she said, is because she has a lot of unnecessary spending, like going out, getting takeaways, eating out, things like that. And also on top of that, she uses things like afterpay and lay-by services, which are like you buy things and you pay them in installment in weeks. So every week she had to pay money for unnecessary expenses like that. So I basically made a budget with her, and now she kind of knows how much she's allowed to spend without taking it from her savings, kind of. And if you do struggle to save and find yourself spending money on things that you don't really need, I have a small tip for you that's really worked for me and my friends. So the key is to write your income down, if it's monthly or weekly, and then write down all your expenses that you have to pay. These are things that you absolutely have to pay, like your mortgage, your rent, your bills, things like that. Once you subtract that from your income, the leftover amount you have, that's what you can save, and you need to decide how much of this you want to save, and you want to make sure you put that decided amount into a savings account before you even, as soon as you get paid. And this is important because if you don't do this, you will just keep getting expenses and keep spending, and you won't have any savings at the end. But if you do this, you probably will still spend until your bank is empty, but at least you'll have some savings set aside and all your expenses are paid for. So it's a good habit to get into, and that's something I've been doing for a while now. So, and as most of you are aware, and if you've managed to save, but you just want to increase your savings for, let's say, a plan for a trip next year or end of the year or something like that, then you can easily look at your budget and your expenses and see where you can decrease it to increase your savings. And as most of you are aware, in order to increase savings, you need to either increase your income or decrease your expenses. This is why sometimes it is really hard to increase savings, because you find out that there is no way you can decrease your expenses any lower because you're paying the minimum amount. So if you have a budget, you realize this sooner, and sometimes it motivates you to try find other ways to maybe increase your income. And that's another positive thing. this is where you can get creative and think outside the box a little bit. And me and my friend, we went through something like this at the start of the year, and we realized our expenses were too high and not enough to be able to increase our savings. So we thought about doing our own business, and we started like a water blasting business that we did on Saturdays just to increase our income so we could actually increase our savings as well. So a personal budget also acts as an early warning system because you can anticipate your upcoming costs or expenses. So having a budget will essentially show you how you can pay for these expenses, whether it's through reducing spending in another area or your savings account. And you can identify these upcoming expenses and how to pay for it. And if you can't afford to pay for it, you can arrange other alternatives or options to help you manage these expenses. So that's one of the good benefits of having a budget. One of my personal favorite benefits of having a personal budget is that it really helps me control my unwanted spending. Once you make a budget and get into a habit of analyzing it or evaluating it every so often, you start looking at expenses from a different perspective almost. Like when I need to buy something, for instance, that I don't really need, I look at how it will affect my money flow or how it will affect my funds, and what sacrifices I need to be able to make to afford this. And then I'll think if it's worth making these sacrifices, is it worth taking that much money out of my savings for something I don't need? Then that's really helped me control not spending my money unnecessarily. So if having a personal budget is such a smart thing to do, then why don't we all do it? So here are some of the 7 reasons why people struggle to make a personal budget. The first one's the obvious one and the most common one probably. It's just you don't have the time or you can't find time to do it. And setting up your budget and reviewing your progress each month is not really a time-consuming process. And there's some simple things you can do to make things really easy on yourself. One of the things is make sure all your personal spending comes from one bank account or credit card instead of multiple different bank accounts, and also try not to pay for your personal expenses using your business accounts. This way, you'll only have one spending source that you'll have to track, which makes it easier than having multiple sources. Secondly, I'd suggest to get a hold of a simple budget template to take the work out of setting one up. So we provide you with a really simple template at the end of the session. So feel free to use that. And as an alternative, you could also subscribe to a budgeting app such as Wally or You Need a Budget or Good Budget. There's a lot of them out there. But secondly, many people don't like the limits they feel a budget will place on them. And it is important to think of the budget as a spending plan instead of a budget. It should be the exact opposite of confining. If anything, it's a bit liberating in ways because you can spend your money without guilt because you know your money is allocated to all your expenses and savings as necessary. So you'll no longer have the fear you might run out of money before the end of the month or something like that. Another reason is there's no doubt that money can be a cause of conflict in a household. And the simple fact prevents many couples from even talking about budgeting or talking about how to organize their finances. But conflict around money doesn't really resolve itself, and a personal budget is one simple way you can take towards a healthy relationship. Budgeting can also be scary at first. You may not want to find out the cost of your bad habits, or you might have mixed emotions and maybe have some shame or guilt about your financial debt and things like that. However, sticking your head in the sand is definitely not the right answer, and it's healthier to deal with the truth and make changes instead of denying them and continuing on the same path. Some people also have too much pride or say that they don't really need a budget, but try not to let your financial future be harmed because of your preconceived notion about who needs a spending plan, because the truth is we all really do need a spending plan, and it just makes life so much more easier. I reckon it's a good idea to set a monthly reminder maybe and try spend an hour each month just preparing your budget and then going through it and checking whether you're on task, see if you've been over or under and things like that. It's a really good habit to get into, and understanding these benefits and building the habit are really key. So let's look at the different components of a personal budget. The first step in a personal budgeting is to set up your 12-month personal budget with income and expenses broken down on a monthly basis. This can be done in an Excel spreadsheet or by using one of the many personal budgeting apps. First, you enter your monthly income, then you enter your expenses line by line, broken down into categories, so that you can see your monthly spend for each category. And these are some of the common categories that most of us can use, like housing, which are your rent and mortgage and house insurance, things like that, and different categories like food, medical, lifestyle, debt payments. You might even have other categories. So if you have expenses relating to those categories, feel free to use those as well. And seeing how much of your income needs to be allocated towards, say, food, for example, can be really empowering and give you more of an insight into your own lifestyle. It's also a good thing to split your expenses into fixed expenses, things like rent or mortgage, that remain the same each week or each month. So the first thing you want to do is list down these fixed expenses so you can just input it straight into an Excel spreadsheet or a template. And next you want to look at your variable expenses, things like power, groceries, that are different each month or each week. So you want to look at your previous, with these expenses, maybe for power, for example, you can take a look at your previous years and average each month to get an average expense, and you can use that in your budget. When budgeting your debt repayments, this is your opportunity to plan for increases according to cash surplus and your wealth creation plan. So your personal budgeting goals may be to accumulate sufficient cash to invest further or in your own business. And this is your personal budget, and it needs to reflect your overarching family goals. So I'll quickly take you through our personal budget template, which we will provide at the end of the session. So you start off by putting your name in at the top left-hand corner, and you can also include your partner if you would like to do your budget together. The next step is, in your gross annual income, you enter your annual income before tax, and the column next to it gives you the income after tax, and the one next to it gives a monthly income after tax. Once you've done that, your next step is to enter the expenses in the expense columns. So here you can see the expenses split based on different categories, basic living costs, and they're even further split into subcategories. So what you want to do is put in your fixed expenses that you've written down earlier, put that in there, and you can change it here depending if you want a weekly payment or a monthly payment. So, and that will calculate your total expenses and put it over here. And once you've got that, it will calculate your annual surplus, which is how much extra money you have for savings and things like that. So it's a really good template to use and really simple template to start with. So once we send it to you, make sure you actually use it and go through it. And on this side, we have in the green, and these rows are for the actual budget. So this kind of helps you to compare your budgeted amount to how much you actually spend. So if there's any savings there as well, that all gets added up into the annual surplus up top and shows you how much you have left over, basically. Okay, so now that we've had a look at the template, let's have a look at creating accountability. There's little point in preparing a personal budget if you don't monitor your progress against your goals. Preparing the budget will be a really valuable experience as you learn where your money actually goes. However, this is only the first step. The real value comes from seeing your spending habits improve and having open and comfortable discussions about where money goes and how you're achieving your personal and financial goals. Remember, it is really important to track your spending on a monthly basis, at least. So 1 hour a month just to track your spending, see how you're going. That should be more than enough. And for some couples, discussion about spending and budgeting are normal, but for others, particularly where money behaviors differ, conversations about money are bit more tense. So in this case, maybe some people might consider engaging an external facilitator to sit down with you and to work out your budget and be a non-judgmental sounding board. This can also provide independent accountability as well. And the main thing is, throughout the process, try have some fun and bring some light to what can be a serious topic. You can even celebrate your wins and maybe treat yourself every time you've met your targets and things like that. And of course, you can spend money as a celebration, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's completely fine as long as you do it within your own means. So thinking back to our thought of the day, don't hide any of this from your children. Let them see you set aside time to work on your finances and your budget. Make this process as normal and lighthearted as you can, instead of making it ominous and scary. We really want our children and younger kids to be encouraged by our habits and follow through. We did an exercise within our office, and we asked our team to create their own personal budget and tell us what they learned from doing it. Some of them already had a budget, but we all came up with at least one, if not more, things that we could take away from making that budget. For example, our admin person learned that during the lockdown, she had cut down a lot of her expenses, but her expenses in some other areas were higher, like online shopping and things like that. And she realized the reason for this, other than the obvious reason that we're in lockdown and we don't have a lot of time for anything else, is because she gets a lot of notifications and emails from companies with offers and things like that. So it's really hard to avoid the temptation when you have so much free time. So she basically just unsubscribed from all those notifications so she didn't get tempted and roped into buying things. So you can see how a budget can really influence your other habits and help you gain a better understanding and give you a better insight into your own lifestyle. Another member of our team talked about this really cool app called You Need a Budget. I won't get into it too much today, but they have a 30-day free trial if you would like to check it out. And when you sign up, they send you a half-an-hour video on how to get started and things like that. So it's really helpful if you want to just have a look at it and play around with it. It's called You Need a Budget. It's $11 other than that, but if you can still just give it a go for 30 days and see if it works for you, and then decide to buy it. She also mentioned that she uses another app for her kids to budget their allowance that they get. And I thought that was really cool and awesome to not just show your younger kids how to save and be more financially aware, but also instilling good habits at a young age. And it motivates them to keep learning and build on those habits. And they'll just be really beneficial for them in the future as well. And it's also extra motivation for parents to stay on top of their finances and budget, because when you have your kids involved in something, you essentially have to be involved as well. So it's almost like a fun activity you can do with your whole family if you think about it like that. Okay, so let's look at some of the next steps you can take from here. We know that focusing on personal spending can be confrontational, and you may get worried that your spouse or accountant will judge your spending, and that's really not the focus of setting a personal budget. Your personal budget is just that, personal. It's yours alone, and your budget simply reflects your decisions around how you spend your earnings and how much should be left over for debt reduction and savings and investments. So instead of dwelling on the roadblocks like time, fear, or pride, we need to remember to focus on the benefits, which are better control, focus, and awareness, improved money habits, and also being able to achieve your wealth goals or your financial goals. Focusing on the benefits you seek to gain, and then take the first step of setting your annual personal budget. And you can use our simple template that we'll send you later, or you can choose another app that works for you. So focus on the expenses that you can and want to control, and get support from us if you need help or independent accountability. We'll take a look at what supports we provide, and there's a few ways in which we can help you. The first one, if you would like some assistance through the process of making a budget, then these are the few things we can do. We can offer personal budget review, which is a review of the draft annual budget you've made and give you some feedback on it, or you can add some coaching on top of that, and through personal budget coaching sessions or coaching programs on a monthly or quarterly basis. And of course, we'll give you the personal budget template that I showed you earlier and at no extra cost. And we can also provide complimentary business meetings. These are 1-hour meetings focusing on your business, also at no extra cost. So if you're interested in any of these services, please don't hesitate and get in touch with us and make that next step. So to wrap it up, that brings us to our final session and the Q&A. So if you have any questions, now is a good time to just pop it in the chat button and we'll try to get through as many as we can.
So Alan, one of the questions that we've received is, do you have any tips on tracking spending?
Yeah, so some of the banks, I know BNZ does this. It's really cool feature that you can do. BNZ basically gives you a report on all your spendings and what categories, and categorizes them into different categories for you, which is really good. So once you access it, it'll show you what you spend your money on, what type of spending it is. And I think some of the other banks do as well, but I'm not sure. I know BNZ does it in maybe ASB as well.
Westpac does it too.
Westpac, yeah, that's right. Another thing you can do is just have a diary and write down every time you spend money. And it sounds a bit tedious at the start, but once you do it for a week, you kind of automatically get how much you spend and you pay more attention to it, and it gets to a point where you don't even need it. So yeah, I'd suggest having a diary or just jotting down your expenses day by day, one by one as you go, and you have it all written down. It's easy to add them up and find out how much you're spending each week. So yeah.
Okay, we've got another question. How long should it take to create a budget?
That's a good question. How long it takes really depends. It doesn't take a lot of time unless you have different bank accounts and your expenses just all over the show. You're paying your personal expenses using your business account and things like that. That might take a bit of time to go through each account and work out how much you're spending, but even then it shouldn't take a lot of time, because as most of us are aware of our spendings and we know what personal spendings we make. Even if we can't remember it, if we write down as we go, we can easily find out what we spend on and how much we spend on. So it really shouldn't take a lot of time. Maybe I made one recently with my friend, and she didn't have a whole lot of spending as we were a bit younger and we don't have so many bills, but still shouldn't take more than an hour, something like that. So yeah, hope that answers that question.
Okay, we've also had a question about the payment for the app You Need a Budget. That was a monthly payment, wasn't it, Alan?
Yeah, so $13 per month.
I think you can get it a little bit cheaper if you pay an annual amount, but right. It's all on their website. You can check that out. One more question. How can you adjust a budget if it's not working for you?
So these are things I kind of mentioned earlier on. So you have your expenses that are your fixed, like your non-adjustable expenses, that things that you have to pay for absolutely without fail, like your house, mortgage, insurance. So you need to find out how much you have left over after these expenses, and any expense you make after that, those are the expenses that you can really adjust. So if you don't have a lot left after that, then that kind of means you might need to increase your income or find some other ways to earn money. So it just gives you a better idea on, firstly, if you can adjust or not. And if you can't, then it tells you that, and then you can find for better ways to increase your income, for example. So yeah.
Okay, I think that's all the questions, unless anybody's got any more they want to type out into the chat box or Q&A box. No, I think that's it.
Okay, so if we don't have any questions, before we leave, I'll just like to show you this quote. A budget is telling you where your money a budget is telling your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. And a personal budget is just that. It's you deciding where you want your money to go. So it's you taking control, and that's got to be a good thing. So just thank you all for joining this webinar again. I hope you all have a safe day, and I hope you've taken away some cool thoughts to take away home and work on from this webinar. And just a quick reminder that before you leave, there is a survey to fill out, and if you could do that, that'd be awesome, and we could get some feedback on what to do and what topics to cover next time. If you have anything you want us to cover for next webinars, drop that in the survey as well, and we'll try our best to do it. So thank you again, everyone. Have a safe day and a good rest of the week.